Now, in general, we need to talk about the reasons for this tragedy, which became connected to several circumstances.
Russian President Vladimir Putin publicly apologized for the first time to the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, for the passenger plane of Azerbaijan Airlines that was shot down by Russians. Putin essentially admitted that the plane was shot down by Russian air defense missiles, but then he started blaming Ukraine for the incident. It's telling how the meeting between Aliyev and Putin was shown with very, very poor sound. And here questions arose. Didn't any of the Russian propagandists have a decent microphone so that the whole president of Russia could be heard? But I think the reason here is something else. Putin was forced to apologize to Aliyev, but the Kremlin decided to do it in such a way that it would be hard to hear, so that, it wouldn't be so clear what Putin was saying. He mumbles. And he fidgets, shuffling his feet, and is forced to apologize to the president of Azerbaijan. And pay attention to how confident Aliyev feels at that moment. But Putin doesn't behave like that for no reason. The Kremlin knows that showing off is no longer in their best interest. A couple of months ago they were threatening Azerbaijan with a second special military operation, but it turned out that Russia is simply collapsing from one war and is picking a fight with Azerbaijan, which has Turkey behind it. Putin's balding regime pays a high price. And today, The Atlantic writes that Russia thought time was on its side, but the new Ukrainian strategy is bringing unexpected results. How did Ukraine turn the tables? Simply put, a number of analysts are convinced that Russia has actually started to lose the war of attrition it was counting on. That's why Putin is forced to apologize and shuffle his feet in front of Aliyev. My name is Alexei Pechi. Today is October 9th on the calendar. Let's discuss this topic together. There's definitely a lot to talk about here and from different perspectives. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and write a detailed comment under this video. I also encourage you to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. As demanded by Azerbaijan's president Ilham Aliyev, Russian leader Vladimir Putin finally admitted it was Russians who shot down the Azerbaijan Airlines plane. During a meeting with the president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, Putin essentially admitted that the Azerbaijan Airlines passenger plane was shot down by Russian air defense missiles. Quote, "Two missiles launched by the Russian air defense system did not hit the Azerbaijan Airlines plane directly, but exploded a few meters away." At the same time, he also noted that on the day of the Azerbaijan Airlines plane tragedy, Russia allegedly tracked, meaning escorted, 3 Ukrainian drones that crossed the Russian border on the same day. Quote, "Russia, according to the agreements, is providing every possible assistance to the investigation regarding the crash of the Azerbaijan plane." But just listen to the original statement by Putin and pay attention to the behavior, posture, and position of both Putin and Aliyev.
And now, in general, we can talk about the causes of this tragedy. This disaster is connected to several circumstances. The first is that there was a Ukrainian drone involved. We launched 3 Ukrainian drones at once, which crossed the border of the Russian Federation at night on the day of the tragedy. The second reason lies in the technical failures of Russia's own air defense system. And the 2 missiles that were launched did not directly hit the plane.
If this had happened to the Malaysian plane, and they exploded, because that was the real tragedy, just a few meters away, about 10 meters
away. After watching this video, I immediately had a question. Why is the sound so bad? Why is the audio so terrible? I can't believe that in all of Tajikistan, where Putin and Aliyev met, they couldn't find a microphone for Russia's president. The audio in all the videos was recorded by journalists on site, so the sound quality is poor. But still, in the recordings, you can make out what Putin is saying, even in those that were just recorded on a phone, so to speak. But on the broadcast of the official propaganda resource Smotrim, the sound is absolutely terrible. So, the Kremlin sent propagandists to cover Putin's visit to Tajikistan, his meeting with Aliyev, but didn't provide them with microphones. Well, that's just nonsense. That's why I think the Kremlin simply gave the order not to put microphones on Vladimir Putin, so it wouldn't be so obvious how he mumbles and hesitates in front of Aliyev. because previously the Kremlin actually rejected the version that the Azal plane was shot down by Russians, and at that time the Russians were threatening Azerbaijan with war and so on. Here, Putin needs to apologize. Let's make the sound worse so it's less obvious. But Putin wouldn't be a Russian if he didn't start blatantly lying here as well. Putin named one of the reasons for the tragedy as technical failures in Russia's own air defense system. It's actually surprising that Putin referred to this as the reason, because in the leaked video from the command post and in the explanatory note from the Panzer S crew commander, Dmitry Paladichuk, there is nothing that would indicate a technical malfunction. On the contrary, in the recording that has long been publicly available, you can clearly hear this Russian Paladichuk giving the order clearly and more than once. If we rely on the data from the investigation documents, they indicate that the tragedy most likely happened due to a lack of proper coordination between the air defense forces and civil aviation, and also because the frightened Russian soldiers were giving orders over a mobile phone for some reason. But for some reason, Putin decided to discredit the Russian air defense by claiming that it was not just a mistake, but a malfunction. And that was a wonderful moment. Let's watch it again. Look.
The second reason lies in the technical battles with the very
Russian air defense system.
Why is this moment wonderful? Because a potential buyer of the Russian air defense system hears from the president of Russia that Russian air defense systems are junk, that they can just break down like that, break down in such a way that they might attack a civilian plane. Well, who would need that afterwards? Well, then Putin tried to shift the blame onto Ukraine. Putin also cited a Ukrainian drone in the sky as another reason, and as he stated, we immediately launched 3 Ukrainian drones. There are 2 points here. First, so where was your super-duper effective cover plan? Why was the cover plan put in place only after the plane was shot down? And the second point, if Russia hadn't started a bloody war against Ukraine, what are the chances that Russians would have had to launch 3 Ukrainian drones at once? I'll answer 0. Next, Putin makes excuses, saying that the Azerbaijani plane was hit not by missiles but by missile debris. At the same time, the moment the order to shoot down the plane was given is recorded on video. It's not about debris, but targeted fire at a civilian aircraft. Listen to the order again.
Azimuth 338 range, 7,000 altitude, 490 speed, 118 continue. Subtitle editor, Asemkin Yegorova. Yes, the range is already 7,000. Fire. I said fire.
That means a direct order was given to shoot down a target with the characteristics of the plane they had been tracking for 2 minutes. They tracked the plane for 2 minutes and then they shot it down. And yes, the warhead of the Panzer Swan is a 20-kilogram warhead with rod-shaped striking elements that detonate near the target, scattering thousands of fragments. So, the Panzer missile doesn't have to hit the target directly, and the Azerbaijani plane was shot down specifically by the striking elements. Technically, the plane was brought down by fragments. But what does that change? And of course the bald jerk. Putin indirectly blames the Azerbaijani aircraft's pilot. Putin hinted like, we offered him to fly to Makhachkala, but for some reason he flew to Kazakhstan, and if he hadn't, he wouldn't have been shot down. And in the end, Putin said that a legal assessment would be given to the actions of the officials, and he also promised to do everything necessary regarding compensation payments to the families of the victims. And in this whole story, it's telling how quickly Russians gave up. You know, from threats of a new war against Azerbaijan to Putin actually apologizing to that very Azerbaijan. And the Kremlin is acting this way for a reason, not just by chance. Journalist Robert Eward, who visited the front lines in Ukraine, wrote a lengthy and interesting article in The Atlantic. I can share this article's link in my Telegram channel Pitchy News if you'd like. And the main idea of this article is very simple. Russia thought that time was on its side, but right now it turns out that Ukraine has started to win in that very war of attrition. Next, I'll share a long quote from Ward's article. Despite Russia's demographic advantage, attempts to encircle the solid Ukrainian defensive line have not brought much success. Capturing this line would take several years of heavy fighting. This refers to the Russian summer offensives. Putin implicitly acknowledged this by trying to demand that the entire Donbas region be handed over to him voluntarily. No one took it seriously. It seemed that Ukraine was in big trouble. Its weapon supply was failing, and Russia was pushing through the front line with its waves of soldiers and mercenaries who seemed endless. Now it seems there is growing confidence that Ukraine is reorienting its institutions for a long war. It is rapidly learning from the fighting, consistently causing enemy losses while minimizing its own. The time, which until now has been on the side of the Russians, is shifting back to Ukraine. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.